Tonight, we are pleased to present a presentation on the great Pearl Bailey. And as I always say with this series, I don't pretend to be an expert in anything that I speak about. Rather, because actually I speak about over 60 different topics. But I love to research. And what I've done this evening is found some very interesting facts and figures concerning the great Pearl Bailey that I hope will be of news to you. Because it's always my goal that if you leave the presentation this evening having learned maybe 2 or 3 things about Pearl Bailey that you might not have known before, then I will consider my job well done. So, I'll present my findings to you first, and then we'll close with a couple of wonderful clips of the great Pearl Bailey in action. I'd like to start off with a question for you folks, and the question is, what is your definition of an entertainer, of a star? How would you define that? Entertainer, star. What words would you use? Memorable. Very interesting. Special quality. What else? Huh? Single. Glamorous. Or glamorously single. Yeah. What else? What else? How would you define an entertainer or a star? Talented. You bet. You bet. Anything else? Good. Good words. Well, this is my definition. A talented individual that is able to make the masses feel something. Someone who understands what celebrity is and uses that for good. Someone who knows when they are in the public that they are a teacher, as every move and word will be absorbed and processed by a public that looks for this person to be a teacher and a role model. Now think about this, folks. How many entertainers or stars today would actually fit that definition? Would you say many? Would you say few? I agree. And I think you know where I'm actually going with this. Pearl Bailey was the definition that I just shared with you personified. Let me read this to you once again with the great Pearl Bailey in mind. A talented individual that is able to make the masses feel something, someone who understands what celebrity is and uses that for good. Someone who knows that when they are in the public, that they are a teacher, as every move and word will be absorbed and processed by a public that looks for this person to be nothing short of a teacher and a role model. There are so many things that are so very impressive about the great Pearl Bailey, and it seems that even to this very day, when you mention the name Pearl Bailey, one of the things that happens, and I can see it right here, right now, is that a smile forms on one's face. In fact, you can almost count on that happening. I started to think about, folks, what actually causes people to smile when they hear the name Pearl Bailey. What are people thinking about that causes such a positive and warm reaction? Maybe it has something to do with the fact that Pearl Bailey herself was incredibly positive and very warm. There are 2 things that usually happens when you see the picture of someone whom society deems as famous. You look at the face of someone and you immediately feel that you can't penetrate any deeper than that you really can't get a read on them. Or you look at the face of someone whose life and soul is written on their face, and you instantly, immediately know who they are. To me, Pearl Bailey's personality, her warmth, and positivity were things you could immediately, instantly get just from looking at her picture. She didn't, in person, even have to open her mouth. Just her incredible presence would cause one to feel this way. Pearl Bailey was Pearl Bailey, no matter who she was playing or what she was singing. And she felt kind of like family, if you think about it. Maybe because she had a face that was so warm, so very open, and so accessible as well. You felt like you knew Pearl just 2 minutes after being in her presence, whether it was live or whether it was on TV or on the big screen. So let's meet Pearl Bailey now and find out just a little more about this amazing entertainer and star. A star that never, ever lost track of who she was and what she stood for, no matter what stage of life she was passing through or performing on. I always like to start things off with quotes that are directly attributable to the people that we speak about in this series. So, with that in mind, here are some quotes that are directly attributable to the great Pearl Bailey. She once said this: "A crown, if it hurts us, is not worth wearing." Next one: "People see God every day. They just don't recognize him." Next one: "There are two kinds of talent: man-made talent and God-given talent. With man-made talent, you have to work very hard. With God-given talent, you just touch it up every once in a while." Next one: "You cannot belong to anyone else until you belong to yourself." Next one: "You never find yourself until you face the truth." Next one: "Never, never rest contented with any circle of ideas, but always be certain that a wider one is still possible." And next one: "What the world really needs is more love and less paperwork." Amen, that's right. And remember this last one particularly, folks. It goes like this: "I never really look for anything. What God throws my way comes. I wake up in the morning, and whichever way God turns my feet, I go." Remember that. Pearl Mae Bailey was born on March 29th, 1918 in Newport News, Virginia. Her father was an evangelical minister, her mom a loving and devoted housewife. Pearl also had a sister and a brother. Her brother's name was Bill Bailey. And it was her brother that would figure prominently in Pearl's desire to become an entertainer. How so? Bill Bailey just happened to be a professional, does anybody know? Musician? Close. He definitely was an artist along those lines, huh? Entertainer, for sure. He was an accomplished tap dancer. And shortly after the Baileys moved to Philadelphia, Bill would tap dance his heart out just about every night at the local Pearl Theater. One night, his family noticed that Bill wasn't home for dinner at the usual time. Pearl decided that she'd go down to the Pearl Theater to see if there was any kind of problem. And guess what happened? Remember the last quote that I just read you about Pearl Bailey, that she said, "I never really look for anything. What God throws my way comes. I wake up in the morning, and whichever way God turns my feet, I go." That's right. Well, God threw Pearl's way an open enrollment in a talent contest at the Pearl Theater, just as Pearl happened to be walking in the door, and of course, Pearl signed up. Coincidence? Yes. Something more? Well, maybe. For the contest, Pearl sang a very memorable version of Poor Butterfly, and you probably won't be surprised when I tell you who the lucky winner of the talent contest was that particular night. Pearl Bailey. What did she actually win? $5, folks. Wow! That was a lot of money back then, and if that wasn't enough, actually, she also, along with the $5, won a 2-week gig at the Pearl Theater. Believe it or not, Pearl would never realize her monetary reward or her 2-week gig at that theater, as the theater closed shortly thereafter due to economic trouble. But did that matter to Pearl? Absolutely not. What she did get from her experience was that she knew in her heart and soul that performing was for her, and delighting people with her energy and charm would definitely be her life's calling. Interesting fact. Consider this, folks. Pearl's father's calling was to share the Word of God and let people know about God's presence within their lives. Pearl's calling was to use God's presence that she felt strongly in her life and let people know that being happy was so much easier than they originally thought. And she did that just by being herself. Pearl never had any pretenses about what performing for the general public might entail. There were no entourages with her when she would travel. She wouldn't demand the best seat in the house or the best table at a restaurant, or insist that somebody get kicked off a plane because she absolutely had to be in Paris by sundown. Pearl Bailey was who and what she was, which was nothing more than being true to her core. I could almost hear her saying, "All I have to do is just be true to who I really am, and the rest is sure to follow if I only believe." Now Pearl would set her sights on New York City. First place in another talent show would prove successful in taking her to the next level of her fledgling career. Talent Night at the world-famous Apollo Theater in Harlem was and still is world famous. Actually, you can still see it on late night TV. Anybody ever see Talent Night at the Apollo Theater? You can still catch it. And if you see it, it's exactly what it was back then. Grueling. Grueling. You really get your performer's chops when you sit on that stage because, well, it's kind of like being an opera singer at La Scala in Milan, in Italy. If you're good, the audience adores you, and you can instantly become an overnight sensation. But if you're bad, let's put it this way. If they were passing out tomatoes, that audience would use them. And actually they have on occasion. It's no wonder, probably, that the La Scala main curtain happens to be red for that reason. Same difference at the Apollo Theater. That audience will tell you, if you're good, they want more. If you're bad, don't even finish what you're doing and step off the stage now. And if you don't, from their seats, they will force you to do it. It's a horrible thing if you aren't good. Well, of course, Pearl was sensational that night. The audience adored her, and the next step would be a very successful tour of nightclubs in Pennsylvania. The tour would only pay Pearl $15 a week. But did she care? Not really. This would bring Bailey to the next step in her career, a grueling USO tour across the USA, entertaining stateside U.S. troops. After World War II, Pearl kept walking on in her career. She would appear at New York City's famous Village Vanguard nightclub in 1944, and one night, the owner, who thought the world of Pearl, decided that he would just take her aside and talk to her. Nightclub owner: "Hey, Pearly Mae, you are such a powerful force on stage. You know what? I can see it. People really, really love you. Would you let me give you just one piece of advice, if I may, if I can be so bold? If there's just one bit of advice I can give you, Pearl, it's this: always be yourself. People love you, Pearl, for who you are, and they want more of it. Let them see the real you. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about? Do ya? Yeah. Pearly Mae: "Hey, thanks. I really appreciate that. I guess I've been trying to be who and what I'm really not on stage. Okay, so I get it. So how do I go about doing what you're so kindly suggesting?" Nightclub owner: "Just be who you are. Nothing more, nothing less. Who you are with me off stage is who people want to see when you're on stage." And it's as if a light bulb went off above Pearl's head. She got it, and the neatest thing about all of this is that she didn't have to work hard to change things around at all. She could just be who she was. That was more than enough. And it was then and there that Pearl's trademark performing style was born. If I asked you, which I am, how would you describe Pearl Bailey's trademark style?
Ebullient.
Huh?
Ebullient.
Ebullient. We've got quite a crowd here tonight. Quite a glamorous, ebullient crowd. I love that. Yes, ebullient. What else? What was she sort of famous for doing? How would you describe when you would see her in any one of the media that she excelled in? What is it that you would see? What set her apart from other performers, ebullient or not?
Well, you felt like you had a connection with her.
Oh, I love that too. You felt like you had a connection with her. So how would she go about establishing that? What would she do? What was different about her?
She talked like she was talking to you just one-on-one.
Love that too. She talked like she was talking to you one-on-one, as if there was nobody else in the room. Yes. Anything else? Great, ebullient comments. Anything else? Good. Very well done. Very well said. very well spoken. A critic at the time also summed it up best when he wrote this: "The public image projected through Bailey's songs was less Earth Mother than earthy. Her voice had a pleasant tone, an impressive clarity, and a way of projecting words with exquisite care. She had a special way of styling a song, with a flavor of jazz and often some worldly wise aside on the music's sentiment." He goes on to say, Bailey inherited a special tradition of earthly, sexually aware signing from such pioneers as Ma Rainey and Billie Holiday, tidied it up a bit for general consumption and won an enthusiastic following in nightclubs. I was talking to some of you before this presentation, and you also said that her style that differentiated her was also that she would make these little interesting comments, sort of asides, as she would be singing even a well-known song that nobody else singing that song would have done. And that is also what made her so special. And here is where the big band aspect of Pearl Bailey's career came in. In 1945, Pearl was the female vocalist for no less than 20 fun-filled weeks with the one and only Cab Calloway and his orchestra. Can you just imagine that pairing? Those two together, how incredibly special that would be. What a perfect match. And Pearl's big band career didn't end there. She would also have the pleasure of singing with the following big band leaders and their bands: Noble Sissle, Cootie Williams, and Edgar Hayes, just to name a few. Broadway was the next stop for Ms. Bailey. In 1946, she would appear in an all-black musical called St. Louis Woman and absolutely wowed the crowd. Now, things were really rolling for Pearl. Her career was in full swing and featured constant appearances on the nightclub stage, in plays, and in movies as well. If you are talking African American musical films of the 1950s, two movies would probably instantly come to mind. And Pearl had major roles in both of those films. Any guesses? You probably know both of them, I would suspect. In the 1950s. How about Carmen Jones? How about Porgy and? That's right. Told you would know him. 1957 was the year when Pearl was a featured entertainer at the second inauguration of President Eisenhower. In '59, Pearl released an album of interesting double entendre called For Adults Only. The LP, get this folks, was actually banned from radio play. But you know what? The public absolutely loved it because really it was vintage Pearl Bailey. To that end, she would release a number of LPs after that with similar themes in the early 1960s. If you think that any of the things that I've mentioned thus far have been the high point in Bailey's career, you really don't have the whole story yet, because that was still to follow. And let me preface that by mentioning this once again. I never really look for anything. What God throws my way comes. I wake up in the morning, and whichever way God throws my feet, I go. Pearl probably wasn't looking for this next career milestone, but here it was, simply thrown in her way. Anybody want to guess what it was? Huh? Television, not yet. No, it had to do with Broadway, a major Broadway musical. Oh, I think you're going to get it. I can feel it. I can see it on the tip of your tongue. All right, here's a hint.
The musical version of Matchmaker.
There you go. Hello, Dolly, which is the musical version of Matchmaker. When the show first debuted on Broadway, who played Dolly? Carol Channing, that's right. Originally, it did star the one and only Carol Channing. David Merrick, the infamous Broadway producer that brought that original production of Hello, Dolly to Broadway, decided that it was such a hit that he would, in 1967, revive the show, but this time with a twist. This time, that incredible Broadway musical would have an all-black cast. Pearl Bailey, of course, was cast as Dolly, and her dear friend, Cab Calloway, would play the role of Horace Vandegelder. What a brilliant piece of casting that was on Mr. Merrick's behalf. Everyone certainly thought so as well, since the show, with those two in it now, was nothing short of a certified smash hit. New York City's most infamous theater critic by the name of Mr. Clive Barnes said it best when he wrote the following about this incredible revival. This is what he wrote. Ms. Bailey took the whole musical in her hands and swung it around her neck as easily as if it were a feather boa. Her timing was exquisite, with the sides tossed away as languidly as one might tap ash from a cigarette. And her singing had that deep, throaty rumble that is always so oddly stirring. The audience would have elected her governor if she'd only named the state. Let me tell you, folks, a review like that from Clive Barnes hardly ever happened. Suffice it to say, of course, that Pearl would win the prestigious Tony Award that year for her amazing work in Hello, Dolly, and you can still buy the cast album on CD to this day of that revival, and I highly recommend it. In 1971, as some of you had mentioned, she had her own show for a while on TV and then would appear on numerous other TV shows. When Pearl Bailey was on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, so many in the nation would make a point of tuning in. If you asked what facet of her career Pearl liked the most, she would immediately tell you that she loved singing before a live audience the best. So much of Pearl Bailey's personal side also happened to be her professional side as well. She married 3 times. Her third marriage, though, was a charm. She broke race barriers and married jazz drummer Louie Bellson. That's right. Bellson would leave his prized position with Duke Ellington and his orchestra to take another prized position, which happened to have been Pearl Bailey's musical director. And as you just heard, he actually became much more to Pearl than just that. Together, they would adopt 2 children. Pearl Bailey once said this, "I have a go-for-it attitude about education, about life, about everything. In fact, my religion is action. You can't spend your life waiting around. You go for it." And in going for it, folks, Pearl was named a public goodwill ambassador to the United Nations under the administrations of Presidents Ford, Reagan, and George Bush. In 1977, President Nixon appointed her, and I love this, as an ambassador of love. What a wonderful title to have, and well-deserved. Yes, I am an ambassador of love. Much of this had to do with the fact that Pearl Bailey, as many of you know, was a major humanitarian. Someone once said, if there is a benefit for children, Pearl is supporting it. If one cares about others' liberties and rights, Pearl is there standing tall and advocating that the ethical and fair thing be done. If AIDS is the issue, Pearl rolls up her sleeves and wades right in to see that the humane thing be done. In other words, they went on to say, Pearl loves people, all kinds of people, any age, any race, any nationality, any philosophy. To her, people are people. I believe that the great Pearl Bailey had a heart as big or bigger than the sun. She truly cared about people, and if you don't believe me, folks, get this. Pearl spoke to the World Health Organization about the importance of world cooperation and concern about AIDS victims. She worked closely with Barbara Bush on the First Lady's National Literacy Campaign. Bailey also would often speak to young people throughout the nation about developing a sense of commitment and contribution. She also worked tirelessly for child abuse prevention and family cohesiveness. If you didn't see Pearl Bailey in a show on the screen, on TV, or live, at least you now know how she spent what was kind of her downtime. Bailey was also awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1988. Pearl also has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, right next to mine.
Yeah, right.
Have you seen it?
Yes, I have.
Do you want a photo of it?
Yes, I do.
I got the photo,
love one.
I've got the DVD,
All right.
and I have the newspaper article.
I'll take it.
All of them? Okay, see me after the show.
I will.
Yeah. Bailey also wrote 6 best-selling books, and when she was 67 years of age, earned a bachelor's degree in theology from Georgetown University. Altogether, Pearl made 8 films. Altogether, Pearl recorded 27 albums. Pearl's health was generally good, although she did have a history of heart issues. Bailey would have to have her knee operated on in the summer of 1990. As she was recovering from the operation at 72 years of age, Pearl passed on unexpectedly. It's as if we all held our breath and plunged ourselves into a voluntary moment of silence when the news of Pearl's passing was suddenly broadcast the world over. Nobody could believe that she was gone. Many still can't believe that she's gone. But you know what? I firmly believe that she really isn't gone. And let me just break for a minute and say that, again, I've talked to a couple of you about Pearl Bailey before I began this evening, and you had some interesting things to say. Could I have your name? Juanita, what was it that you told me? Because I would love for that to be shared with everybody. And if you can't hear her, I'll repeat after you speak.
I have always said that if I could speak to anybody for an hour,
If she could speak to anyone for an hour, past or present, it would be Pearl Bailey. Why?
just her attitude. I loved all the little comments about her feet hurting, which in reading, her life story, they really did hurt. First time she ever went into a big fancy hotel with thick carpet, she took shoes off, and then she laid down and rolled in it.
Can you all hear it? You can all hear, yes.
Little things like that. And she made the remark, there's only one race, the human race.
I love that. There's only one race, the human race. That's so very powerful. You know what? It shouldn't be. It shouldn't have to be. But it really is.
Yeah. She was an incredible woman.
She was an incredible woman. Thank you for sharing that. Did you have more? No, because it's fine if you do.
No.
Just don't make it too long. No, okay. Anybody else? Thank you. I appreciate that. It's a wonderful contribution. Somehow, some way, the great Pearl Bailey lives on in one form or another. We just had proof of it right now. In other words, I believe she never really left us. Her spirit, her smile, her being in the moment, and so much more will be here forever. Someone once said that Pearl Bailey was sultry and statuesque, a muse in high heels. I love that. They went on to say that when she sang a song, she squeezed it with an earthy embrace that could warm a listener from the back of the neck to the soles of their feet. How very true those words are. And you know what else I believe, folks? That Pearl's somewhere still saying, still believing this: I never really look for anything. What God throws in my way still comes, and I wake up each and every morning, and whichever way God turns my feet, I go. How is this so? Because people like Pearl Bailey don't just leave us one day. That type of entertainer, that type of star is timeless and is always, always with us. And you know what? I, probably you as well, would not have it any other way. Thank you.